Refrain from joining any political or religious organizations. A message to those seeking freedom. By Xuefeng. Religion and political parties are among the root causes of turmoil in human society. Joining a religion equates to relinquishing spiritual freedom, and joining a political party means giving up personal freedom. Giving up freedom is equivalent to willingly becoming a slave, and a slave, not free in spirit, thought, soul, or body, will become an accomplice to evil. They will launch bloody attacks on their compatriots and the world under the guise of noble reasons and flowery rhetoric. Let us first revisit the admonition of George Washington, the wise Democrat, the founder of the United States of America, and its first president. I have already expressly told you of the dangers within the nation from various factions, especially those based on regional prejudices. Now, let me remind you in the most comprehensive and solemn manner about the harmful effects of partisan spirit. Unfortunately, this spirit is inseparable from our nature, rooted in the most intense human emotions. It exists in different forms in all governments, merely suppressed and controlled to varying extents. However, in democratic governments, it breeds and indeed becomes the biggest enemy threatening these governments. Factional disputes naturally produce feelings of revenge. These have caused terrifying atrocities in different countries and eras. Dominated by such revenge, the alternating rule of two factions itself is a terrible tyranny, for factional disputes bring turbulence and suffering, gradually inclining people towards absolute personal rights in search of security and protection. Sooner or later, the leader of a ruling party, by virtue of better skills and luck than his competitors, will exploit the aforementioned general sentiment to undermine public freedom for personal gain. Even if we do not expect things to develop to such extremes, though we should not completely ignore the possibility, the constant troubles caused by partisan spirit are enough to prompt wise nations to prevent, mitigate, and suppress it out of a sense of responsibility and self-interest. Partisan spirit often prevents various public meetings from focusing on issues and weakens the functions of public administrations. It troubles the nation with baseless hatred and groundless fears. It incites one faction to hate another, sometimes even provoking disturbances and rebellions. It opens the door to foreign influence and corruption. Through the channels of partisan sentiment, foreign entities easily find their way into the government, thus, a nation's policies and will are swayed by those of another country. Some believe that the presence of parties in a free country helps monitor and check the government's administration and maintain the spirit of freedom. This view may be correct to a certain extent. In monarchic governments, patriots may not particularly favor but can tolerate partisan spirit. However, for governments of a democratic nature or purely elected ones, such partisan spirit should not be promoted, as these governments naturally have enough partisan spirit to achieve any beneficial purpose. The problem is that partisan spirit often carries excessive dangers, and we should strive to moderate and suppress it with public opinion pressure. An unextinguished fire must always be carefully guarded against to prevent it from blazing into fierce flames, otherwise, it will not warm but burn everything. As long as there are parties, they first consider the interests of their own factions, they absolutely do not prioritize the interests of the entire nation. They will try every means to place members of their faction in key positions in government institutions to maintain and safeguard their authoritarian or even dictatorial rights. This is the case with parties, and the same applies to religious factions. To protect the interests of their sects, they will spare no expense to attack and exclude other sections. Many of the major wars in human history were carried out under the planning and leadership of political parties or religions, nominally for the country, for the nation, for justice, for sanctity, for democracy, for freedom, for human rights, but in reality, for their own selfish interests. Humanity must enter the era of Lifechanyuan, an era without political or religious organizations, an era of no sage is left out, the world is one family, an era of reason, peace, and humanity, an era of harmony between nature and humanity, an era of roads unguarded at night, doors unlocked at night, an era of flowers blooming together, schools contending, an era where everyone enjoys the freedom of soul and life. Sages and gentlemen associate without forming parties. Ambitious, conspiratorial, and enslaved individuals form parties without forming friendships. Wise people seek the truth without joining religious organizations. Fools blindly follow religious organizations, disregarding the truth. Lifechanyuan challenges political and religious organizations of all sizes and types around the world. Mr. Panyading proposes the concept of spiritual warfare. I am willing to engage in a spiritual war with you, a battle of spirit and soul regarding the greatest creator, truth, gods, faith, and morality, without disturbing the normal functions of governments and without interfering with people's daily lives. All those who wish to pursue freedom of soul and life, please do not join any political or religious organizations. All those who desire freedom of soul and life, please leave or detach from political and religious organizations as soon as possible. What is the way of the greatest creator? This is the way of the greatest creator. What is the way of truth? This is the way of truth. Those who do not heed this advice, just wait to go to hell. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Consider checking important information.